How's it going, everyone? It's your favorite apostates. My name's McKay.
I am Jordan, and we are coming at you today with a shift in the posting video schedule planned thing that we had.
Michaela Skinner just got shelved
Michaela Skinner got shelved for a second week because I got tagged in something on TikTok by Julia Bettard. I don't know if I said her last name right. I'm sorry if I didn't. She tagged us in this video on TikTok that I had not come across, which was another creator named Bridget, who was talking about a old influencer back that I would occasionally watch when I was in high school, Steal Babe 09, or her actual name, Meredith Foster. She has not posted on YouTube in a while, and I don't follow her on anything. And apparently I have missed a lot. By not being involved or paying any attention to what she's doing. But over the last 4 years, she has been diving head first into religion to what appears on social media to be a very extreme degree. It's every post on her social media outside of YouTube. And so I hadn't heard of anything until I was tagged in this post. And the creator was talking about a video that was super bizarre. And they were like, this video is giving me Ruby and Jodi vibes. And if you're not familiar with us, we were one of the people who religiously covered the whole Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke child abuse, went to prison, family blogger, Mormon Utah family blogger situation. Former therapist turned life coach. Gross behavior. So we covered that whole saga to a really insane degree. It was a lot. And so
hours and hours and hours.
Hours and hours of content. So if you need to get caught up, there's a whole playlist for you. But anytime that people tell me things like, this reminds me of Ruby and Jodi, I'm always intrigued because we're so well versed in this content now that I can spot it from a mile away. But usually I watch those things and I'm like, no.
Kind of take it with a grain of salt.
I don't see it. So I looked up this Meredith Foster video that she recently posted because I was like, okay, I'll take a look. I'm going to trust this creator. I'm going to trust the watcher of ours who tagged us and see what happens. Well, lo and behold, this is the most bizarre video I have watched in a long time. And I'm going to agree there are some bizarre parallels in this situation to that situation. I'm not trying to insinuate that the people that are involved are committing any crimes or abusing any children. So before you get ahead of me, relax. I'm not insinuating that. There are just some weird things, like a alleged therapist being involved, very involved with a person.
A lot of weird parallels.
And some uncomfortable to watch physical affection. And is it a therapist really, or is it a life coach? Is it therapy or trauma consulting? And if you're new here, I'm also an associate licensed therapist. And so I tease these things out because what happened with Jodi is concerning in the realm of mental health. And so we take these things very seriously.
Even to the point where the Utah legislation is
doing things about it.
Reconsidering the fact that there are basically no regulations surrounding life coaching and things of that nature. So
now, is that a massive issue that's not going to be solved overnight? Yes, but there's discussion happening, which I'm happy with. But I want you to watch this video with us, and then we're going to give you some context around who this person that Meredith is involved with. And we had to do some finagling because by the time I got around to this video, she had privated her website. So McKay and I had to do some finagling to be able to look at her website. And unfortunately, by the time we got there, she had privated a lot of the videos on her official YouTube channel. So there are a lot of videos that we don't have access to anymore, but there are some that we have found. So this is by no means extremely comprehensive. This is dipping our feet into what we've been able to find. And getting your thoughts on if we need to go further with this or if this is something that we need to continue to pay attention to.
Let's get to the weirdness. Let's just go and you guys will see.
If you're not familiar with who we're talking about, if this is all new to you, heyday for this girl, in my opinion, was really when I was a teenager, so it's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
But Meredith Foster is going to be the one that is sitting on the right, and her content primarily focused around what was popular in my high school years, which was like, what's in my backpack? Like, it's like our version, like the
Get Ready With
age
Me
group's version of Get Ready With Me. Like, now it's kind of that, and like room tours and makeup, and like, here's my makeup routine, and here's my locker at school. And like, I watched some of it, and oh my gosh, it makes me so nostalgic, because it's like, there was not expensive products in sight. There was no linking of products. Like, all the stuff that she promoted in the beginning was like at Target. Like, it was a different time. The departure from her not posting on YouTube to suddenly, like, on her other platforms, posting like really heavy religious stuff in like every context, and attending very conservative things. What is that? It's like live action or something. She went to a live action thing. She went to a conference, or like a little religious meet that actually Farron Wright and Brittany Dawn also went to. So if you're part of the Fundiverse, we now have crossover between.
There's already a connection.
Yeah, there's already connections happening. So it's very interesting. And she's very political now, and very conservative and very right-leaning. And her mom was even at January 6th, like, took photos of herself there at the insurrection. God. So this goes very deep, but let's hop into what's happening here.
First off, Jordan, this was what Jordan showed me. She came up, saw the TikTok and everything, pulled this up and showed it to me, and I was like,
I think his soul departed for a moment.
I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending.
Oh, no. And immediately, like, before, like, set the scene, we're staring at, like, two people sitting on a couch, just giving, like, very boho cute, but then there's a sign on the wall saying Jesus, sex, and grace with no commas, and a woman wearing a stethoscope in a YouTube video who's not okay, just
kind of odd.
Already, before words have even been spoken, we're already in a weird place. We're in a weird place.
And for your sexuality. Hey guys, it's Mare. Welcome back. I know it's been a while. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce my beloved sister, Britt. And we're just really excited about this series. So Britt is a trauma counselor, and she has been tucked away in a remote part of the world, serving as a medical missionary and trauma counselor for young women. So Britt, would you tell them a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Just first off, I'm so honored to be here with you, Mare. Thank you for inviting me. I am a medical missionary. I started out in the medical sciences, and then given my trauma history, the Lord called me back to do my master's and doctoral studies in crisis and trauma counseling. And
so apparently she's from the UK, but
she has kind of an accent.
That accent kind of comes and goes, which is really
kind of
weird.
Bizarre. And I don't know what a medical missionary is. I mean, does I took biology in college mean that I can call myself a medical missionary? Because medical science
have to go
is like,
abroad,
does she have an associate in medical science? Is that what she's trying to say? Like, I'm confused. Like, I, as a therapist, would never wear a stethoscope. Like, that is so out of pocket for me. But if she's saying she's a medical missionary, I guess that applies more. But if you have a master's and a doctorate in therapy, like, to do anything in the medical field, like, you gotta have some schooling. Usually, like, at least a bachelor's degree. So maybe she has a... Okay, let me give full disclaimer here before anybody gets upset in the comments. I am trying to be very respectful of potentially a person who is also a practicing therapist or clinician who works with people who have trauma, like specifically mothers. It is a very needed part of our field. Like, the whole kind of perinatal area of mental health is largely neglected, and it's getting better. But I want to, like, hold space for other professionals who are doing this work if they're doing it, like, the way they should be and intentionally and within the bounds of, like, their schooling and their licensing. Like, I'm totally here for that. So I don't want to dog on this woman if she's truly operating within the bounds of what she's saying. But I take issue with what's being said and what's being represented on her website. So...
Which, I mean, as per what we can dig up thus far, there's very little evidence that suggests that she has the proper qualifications to do what she does. Like, obviously, we want people to help other people, but when you're not really qualified to help in the capacity that you're trying to help, it's not really helpful.
Usually, if you have the qualifications, you're going to have them blasted on your website. Like, it's as much as for your protection as a clinician as like for the client, right? So they're able to that's why we have state databases and things. So like you can look up your therapist and make sure they have an active license. And so there's also room here for like you can get a master's or even a PhD in like a counseling area, like she's talking about, without having a license. Like you can just be somebody who has a degree in that without pursuing licensure, which means that you're technically not allowed to work with people. You have the expertise, but you're not allowed to apply it with clients. And there's plenty of people who have expertise and can provide that. Like, I'm sure she has lots of knowledge if this is actually true. It's just you can't be practicing that knowledge with people in a specific therapeutic way. Like not providing diagnoses, things like that. And we'll get into kind of what's on her website a little bit later. But I just wanted to clarify that. Like, I'm not trying to come out here for another therapist. Like, I respect other professionals in the field. But right now, therapist. I'm a little scared.
I work with young women who are coming out of really escaping situations of sex trafficking. I actually call it sex.
Also, as per all of the shit that's going on with Tim Ballard, who was formerly the CEO and founder of
Sound of Freedom. Oh, that's the movie.
Yeah, the biopic Sound of Freedom. It's not even a biopic. It's a dramatization, the whole thing.
Operation Underground Railroad.
Yeah, Operation Underground Railroad. We're really skeptical when people are pushing the whole child sex trafficking. And to be clear, we're not saying that it doesn't happen. We're just very skeptical.
We're more skeptical of it now.
That it is happening on the scale that a lot of people
listen
say
to
that
the professionals that actually work in the space instead of people like Tim Ballard who claim to work in the space.
Yeah.
Slavery, because no person should be owned, and they are owned. I work with other young women coming from situations of sexual abuse as well, and incest. And actually, you're probably wondering about the stethoscope around my neck.
Yep, I was.
I love this.
This is the most precious gift that Mare has given me, and most days I listen.
Already giving gifts.
I was going to say she looks at, like, Meredith looks at her like Ruby used to look at Jodi. Like, with that, like, immense, like, admiration and intensity.
Doesn't that feel amazing?
Oh, gosh. And this is where connection comes in.
That's right.
Because I interacted and I gave her an experience that was very vulnerable for me. It put me in a really uncomfortable spot.
Yeah.
And you showed up stable. Yeah. And so that just reinforced trust.
Yes.
That reinforced connection.
Exactly. Safety, love. I probably said something. I don't remember this, by the way.
Yeah.
The physical parts of it. But what I really do is I pay particular attention to emotional hearts. And that is really what this...
I know we're pausing
the body language is already just really uncanny. The kind of, like when we compared it was like to Mormon missionaries. That's how we would kind of drive the point home and help people, quote unquote, feel the spirit, was really like involved body language and nodding. And after every time your companion would say something, you'd be like, I testify of the words of my companion. And then you'd move on to the next point.
So intense.
That's why we're here. We want to welcome you to
Jesus, Sex, and Grace. This is a condemnation, judgment-free zone.
That's right. No shame, no blame, no condemnation. We're just here to talk about how much you matter to Jesus.
I desperately, desperately want to believe you. I love, like, as a practitioner, as a clinician in this space, I love the idea of not shaming people for whatever their relationship is, whatever their sexual orientation is, whether they're sexually active or not, whether they're married, whether they're not. I love the idea of Christian people or religious people not shaming for those behaviors. However, everything that I've seen Meredith post does not align. She is like the most staunch, like pro-life person I've ever seen.
Yeah. Historically, when it comes to Jesus freaks, sorry for the term.
As a former Jesus freak.
It has been weaponized against people for being outside of the Christian norm, whether they think that's based in their scripture or not.
Also, I'm wondering... if they made that sign, because I was thinking of the poor person who maybe got the sign order like on Etsy for Jesus, sex, and grace, and was like,
I really hope that they just made it
but
themselves.
I'm hoping she just made it herself. I'm really hoping.
I don't know. It is giving, if they paid for it, maybe pay for somebody who knows how to space things out a little bit better.
I think they made it themselves.
I feel like they made
I
it
really
themselves.
hope.
A nice little afternoon at Michael's with the gals.
Yes.
He loves you. We love you. All right, Mayor, hit it. Jesus,
Redeemer, Savior of the world,
lover
of your soul, best friend.
and the best counselor ever.
Wonderful counselor.
All right, sex.
God made it.
Yeah, you did. Best gift of intimacy ever. This is something that I have 4 grownish kids. I say grownish, they say grown. They're in their 20s, all of them. And this is something that
In their 20s. This is...
So
I mean, you can
Meredith
have,
could be her child.
Yeah, you can have close relationships with people who are
Yeah, there's nothing
the
wrong
same
with that.
age who have children that are the same age as you.
Yeah.
But it is also another
But it's
parallel
giving
with
weird
Ruby
vibes.
and Jodi, who
Yeah.
had
An
kids
age
that
gap.
were Ruby's age. Or maybe not quite that old, but still.
told them forever. God gave 1 chapter of the Bible to the creation of literally everything. Everything in it, including us, including all of you. But he gave a whole book of the Bible to sex. And not just...
Now we sound like Bethany.
How are we feeling about Song of Songs?
Solomon.
Oh, of Solomon. How are we feeling about that? Because I don't know. The Mormons basically just toss that one out because it's just fluff, really.
sex.
Yep.
Like, seriously. It's all about how to pleasure your wife. This is some steamy stuff. People literally...
Also, what version of the Bible is that?
I don't know.
It's giving... Oh, with the shalom behind. It's giving Jewish appropriation.
A little bit.
Your Bible's look a
Read
little
it.
bit...
Red hot army. Red hot army.
A little more juicy now. Definitely read it. Grace.
Great.
Don't read what I'm reading. This will give these people a heart attack.
Is Jesus.
And he tells us that he
We couldn't read that.
has...
Out of his fullness is grace. He gives us grace upon grace.
Right, that's John
1:16.
1:16. And so...
Just a couple of gals out on the beach reading the Bible, reading Song of Solomon. Song of Song,
this
whatever.
is weird.
I'm going to have to agree with you on this one.
Actually, in Hebrew, hesed means... It's an
Somebody get Dan McClellan.
amazingly rich word, actually. And it means God's unmerited favor upon us, his undeserved blessing, his lavish loving kindness, mercy, and compassion. And that's what we really...
And I don't know who this third person is. Like, I haven't watched Meredith in years. So this could be like her sister. I know she has like 1 or 2. So I don't know who this middle person is. Or maybe it's the daughter of this. Like, sound off in the comments, Meredith experts who have been watching her for a million years. Let us know if you know who this person is.
I want to say to you is that Jesus loves you. You matter. He wants to... what were we just talking about? That love, Jesus' love is...
Do y'all understand what I'm
literally
saying
an
about
open
the
door.
accent?
Wholeness.
Love is an open door.
Exactly. To wholeness, healing, health, recovery.
Accent is completely gone.
Yeah. Now that we're a couple minutes in.
Yeah, totally gone.
And we're here to pour grace on you as we talk about all these topics.
There it is
We're
again.
going to be talking about healthy sexuality, dating, relationships, Christ-centered relationships, sexual trauma recovery, and reproductive health. We're really excited for you to join us.
Yes. I wanted to thank you guys for reaching out over these last few years and sending such kind and thoughtful messages and really lifting me up in prayer. It's meant a lot to me, actually.
And a lot of you have asked Mare where she's been and what she's been.
See how thick it is now?
Well, and why is she speaking for her? Like, this is giving when Jodi would do that thing over Ruby where she would be like, I'm going to interrupt you and talk for you.
Yes.
And that's actually why we're here today, is to talk about
Talk about it. Yeah, so off camera, a lot has, happened in my life that has never been seen or shared about. But these last few years, I've been really taking time to heal and recover from domestic abuse and sexual abuse and the trauma that comes with that. And Britt has been there with me on the journey. That's why we're here today, to shine light on those topics. And it really...
See, and that's where I get confused, is like, does it being with you on that journey mean she's helped you in like a professional capacity? Because that makes it more concerning. Or is this just like a friend giving advice? Because then we start to like, this is what happened with Ruby and Jodi. Like, we start to blur the lines between a professional relationship and a personal relationship. If you're looking at it ethically, like that's part of codes of therapists, is like you're to prevent dual relationships because that's where inappropriate behavior happens. Yeah. And so it's designed to keep in a professional capacity. So if they've never had a professional relationship, I can understand this, but this is giving like more than just like, you've been my bestie through it all. Yeah. Kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, and the Ruby Jodi aspect also had that element of there has been trauma. And in their case, it was, I don't remember if it was originally because Kevin was a sex addict, or if they started going and they determined that Kevin was a sex addict, regardless of whatever had transpired over the course of their relationship or whatever. But within Mormonism and within that relationship, there was a wound that Jodi was helping Ruby out with, and
their children
became very close with.
Like, Jodi was the therapist for Ruby's children. And so that alone should be, and she was operating as a therapist at that time. So that was professional capacity. There should be no other relationship with your like clients, parents, other than like meeting with them in a professional and ethical way. So this is giving weird parallels, like, and we'll talk about more about how they connected too, because there was another video that Meredith had posted talking about finding this woman's book and like reading her book. And so we will include that also in a second, because I think that plays a role here and also gives weird Ruby Jodi parallels.
Break the silence about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spectacularly brave, Mare. You're such a beautiful survivor, a beautiful thriver, a more than conqueror in Christ. And right, breaking the silence, that is
what is
so
this?
Hard.
This is really
odd.
This
is so much. This is so much.
Also, Baloney, you gotta get lost.
Out, Baloney.
Get lost, dude.
Here, and Mare has such a heart. She wants to lead the way for any of you who are suffering. And we're not keeping up appearances anymore, right?
So again, I haven't followed a lot of her stuff in the last few years, but this is absolutely friends of hers who I think she's had a falling out with for whatever reason, whether it be theirs or hers, I don't know. Drop the tea in the comments if you know. But this absolutely is shade to me.
Oh, it's
like,
absolutely
we're not
shame.
Keeping up appearances. Look at you dressed like a little floozy with all your floozy friends 100%. Over here. Yeah. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah, that seems like shame. I thought we weren't
shaming.
Keeping up appearances is exhausting. And breaking that silence is actually the first step to healing. I love when Mare actually says that she goes, I am not a number
on a scale or a number on a screen, but my worth is in Jesus.
Yeah, and neither are you. Your worth is in Christ. Mare, I was wondering...
Why are we like repeating? Why are we saying the same thing? That's giving me culty vibes. Like, why are we like...
Yeah.
It's giving like chanty almost. Like it.
Telling is transformative.
I've got red flags. I've got red flags going off.
Education and learning that you've been doing about trauma, if you would speak to the negative impact that abuse has on our self-worth and internal dialogue.
Yes. When children are respected and nurtured growing up, they learn that they have...
And the B-roll. They would do the same thing.
They have a foundation of emotional safety where they develop confidence in themselves and learn that they are capable. They feel good about themselves and who they are becoming. But abuse disrupts the development of a positive internal dialogue in their self-image and worth. So a lot of negative self-talk. And when children and teens are abused, their boundaries, their right to say no, and their sense of control are violated on a personal level, and they feel very powerless.
Wow.
Yeah.
This feels rehearsed or scripted to me.
No, this absolutely is.
So this is not
Guarantee
like,
it.
speak to your experience. This is like, here's what we've rehearsed that you're going to say, and you're going to say
Yeah,
it.
and this is what I teach.
And so then it's like, this is very vague. This is not like my experience to me. This is like talking in very vague terms about what.
Yeah.
It's not inaccurate.
It's like a self-help book.
Yeah, but it's not personal.
They feel powerless. I know that I felt that way. Oftentimes when someone tries to tell someone about the abuse, actually their reality is denied and it's twisted to protect the abuser. And instead of placing blame on the abuser where it belongs, they actually internalize messages that they're bad, like they're not worthy to be properly taken care of, they're a burden, they're a bother, and really that they're only good for being used for sex. These are messages that both you and I we've identified with, we've internalized these.
Yes.
The self-talk, the self-hatred has been intense.
It has been. I would say it has been. I think a lot of survivors also feel this intense self-hatred, and they feel kind of immobilized. They're unable to detect in a situation could become more dangerous. They're unable to protect themselves really in a dangerous situation.
See, she keeps looking
and
off
they
screen.
have experienced repeated victimization, which would be rape and assault.
So I'd like to speak.
These are very like, these are therapist-y. This is like therapist-y. This is professional talk. This is not like, speak about your experience and what happened to you. This is, yeah.
Type stuff.
This is weird. And they're touching this whole time.
To what re-victimization means, so we can help everyone understand. So what that means is that when you've been abused when you're younger, and there's that foundation of abuse that's in the background of your schema, your mental schema, your body basically keeps score, right?
Yeah.
Your body keeps score of everything. And even though you're not necessarily...
That book has its criticisms of the author, many of which I agree with. But the body of research generally is, like, there are some criticisms of that book. Don't get me wrong, other clinicians who may watch this. But that is, like, a respected piece of work within the therapist community when, like, learning about trauma. And so I think an overlap that we're going to see here that we saw also with Jodi and Ruby is there is legitimate information and, like, accurate information and, like, being shared in this space. So it's not all like weirdness. Like, there's also what she's speaking to is accurate. She has some of the language and verbiage that would not surprise me of someone who has, like, advanced degrees in counseling. And so it's not just all weirdness. Like, there is some things that pull you in. It's like, oh yeah, like, objectively what she's speaking about is, like, accurate. And like, there's nothing here that's giving me weird vibes about the content itself. It's about, like, where it's being shared and how it's being shared and the context in which it's being shared.
We have, I don't have it right on me right now, but a connections coaching workbook that somebody sent to us that they got from their employer.
Yep.
Not a great look, but there's nothing that is really that extreme at all.
No.
Nothing that extreme. And I feel like they kind of use... People can't, I'm not going to allege that there's anything insidious going on necessarily, but I feel like people can use grains of truth to give credibility to what they're trying to push and to let things fly under the radar for a long time. Because as we saw with a lot of the videos that they were making, and who knows what they were talking about in these, like, groups and getaways or whatever you call them, there were a lot worse things going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about. But when you look at the little workbook and everything, it's just really inconspicuous.
And I mean, Jodi referred to, like, Jodi was really heavy into CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an evidence-based and highly respected therapeutic modality. And so, like, on its face, it's not going to raise any alarm bells.
Thinking through all of these things going on inside of you, this abuse when you're younger sets you up for abuse when you're a young adult. It sets you up for abuse when you're an older adult. And you don't necessarily have the capacity to recognize that you're getting...
More.
Why? Like, so we're insinuating that these people involved in these photos other than Meredith are being abused? Like, is she saying that these people were abusing her? Like, it's very intentional to use photos of these women who I don't know as they're talking about this. Like, it feels very inappropriate to me.
into dangerous situations, or that a situation could potentially become dangerous and you really have no idea how to protect yourself because your no was violated as a child. There were no boundaries. So you go into that powerlessness situation, right? And
you're unable to detect if it's dangerous. So like for me, I experienced date in my early 20s. Because of my past trauma, I wasn't able to recognize that this was actually a really dangerous situation. And so it was never my fault, right? It's never your fault. And so I think when Jesus really came in and lifted that shame off of me, and
I feel like I shouldn't be here, which was a sentiment I commonly expressed with Jodi and Ruby, where it's like, I feel like I'm intruding on something.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a personal, intimate conversation that shouldn't necessarily be broadcast for everyone. I mean, to each their own. Share your story, like break off the bonds of shame if that's what you choose to do. I support you 100%. But it just feels like a weird, like she's barely looking at the camera too, so it makes me feel like I'm like truly intruding on something, like I'm not meant to be watching this.
He said, "You're blameless by my blood. Like I see you holy and righteous," and so it kind of changed everything.
It is never your fault.
Okay. Why did we need to include that?
This is called physical intimacy, when I can touch my friend's hand and say, I love you. Mm-hmm. That is emotional and physical intimacy.
It's never your fault. I'm going to say it as many times as you need to hear it. They need to hear it. It does not matter if you are drinking. It does not matter.
Biggest parallel that also just hit me. Britt doesn't have any platform.
Oh my God.
Meredith has a massive platform.
Here, we'll show you.
4 million subscribers.
4 million.
So
Crazy.
Similar to Ruby and Jodi. If you remember, Jodi was nobody. Nobody knew Jodi. Sure, her Instagram was tiny. Nobody knew who she was. But Ruby was this massive family vlogger with millions of fucking followers. Like millions of followers on Instagram. And what does Jodi do? Jodi comes in and takes over both of those accounts. Shut down the YouTube one, and she takes over the 8 Passengers one for her own project, for connections, and uses that platform to further her stuff. Oh, biggest parallel happening here. Amazing. Oh, frightening.
What you were wearing. It does not matter if you went
Accents
over there
back.
or you invited them over. 90% of sexual assaults and sexual abuse happen with someone you know and you trust. 9 out of 10 times it's with someone that you know and trust.
It's true.
It does not matter what you were wearing. It doesn't matter if you were kissing. It doesn't matter if you were enjoying yourselves. No is a complete sentence. And there are so many ways, different ways to say no, and it needs to be respected and you need to be honored. And so even no one has a right to touch your body. No one has a right to enter your body in any way that you don't want. I didn't know that I was worthy of being treated better than I was being treated. And the truth of the matter is that you are worthy. You are Jesus's beloved, and you're made in his image, and your worth alone is in him, and he loves you.
So Britt is a survivor of being used in as a child and teen, and I remember asking you how you could still believe in a good and gracious God.
I also, when people say that they work in exploited children or whatever like that, if they're not using the term CSAM, I'm always skeptical.
Yeah.
We don't
know.
That term is outdated. But if she's talking to Mare about it and she's not using that term, I don't know. Obviously, I don't think that should ever happen to anybody, and I'm not trying to minimize what is going on, but
language matters.
Language matters.
Love is just for us, and I would just love if you'd explain a little bit to everyone God's nature and how he redeems everything.
So, yes, Mare, much like you, I felt completely unlovable by God most of my life, and untouchable even, and I felt like I needed to run away and hide. I carried this relentless, overwhelming shame for something that should have not been mine to carry, right? And people were essentially telling me that God had allowed these things to happen to me, which is mind-blowingly painful, right? And that just makes you want to run away from God, even more.
Which this is interesting because this is a common rhetoric in a lot of religious spaces. I mean, it's often unspoken, But it's like, you know, you hear things like, well, everything happens for a reason, and like really toxic rhetoric around this. So it's interesting from a religious perspective that they're kind of disavowing this idea, which I completely agree with. It's toxic and horrible and a terrible thing to say to anybody or to allow anybody to believe. But it is interesting that like most of the time this falls in a religious context and they all generally say the same thing.
Honestly, this is really faulty doctrine, and it's remarkably misconstrues the scriptures, right? And God doesn't ever do the hurting. The enemy of this world does.
See, and that sounded like it was Irish. The hurting.
It's because she's trying so hard. Like, that's why it's so obvious.
It's weird.
God only does the healing. He only loves. And God is perfect love. And his perfect love
Cast out all fear.
all fear. And Mare and I really know about fear. Right? Yeah. I wanted to find a way to run to the Lord. I wanted to hide safely with him, in him, and not run away from him. But I was running away from all the pain. And I had no idea how to run to him. The pain was so deep. I just needed to end my pain, and I wasn't finding, there were no good ways to end my pain.
I relate to that too. I genuinely thought that was kind of like the end of my story, that the hurt was so bad that it's like there's no hope.
Yeah.
But God, he comes in and he meets us in the mess, and he redeems it, and he makes a masterpiece out of it, and he takes all those broken things. But it's hard to see it at that time. You feel like kind of, this is just it. This must be the end of my story.
That's all he has for me, and that's so not true. Yeah. So our older sister is also a survivor, and she actually is the one who began this healing journey. I'm so grateful that she did. She really led the way, and she shared something truly life-changing.
Now, I don't know if that's actually her sister either. Again, it's been a long time since I've watched any of her stuff, but she also refers to Brit as her sister. Yeah. So I think they're doing that.
It could be sister in Christ.
Like that weird sister in Christ thing. So just keep that in mind.
Which ultimately I shared with Mare.
I really felt like it actually just brought us into a more tender relationship with the lover of our souls.
Ella handed me this grace-filled book, right? And she says to me, she goes, Brit, God is a gentleman. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? What did you just say? She goes, God is a gentleman. Then she says to me, you know, I know that you haven't known a lot of people that have honored your personhood. And I know you know how awful it is to have a man's intentions forced on you, right? God, in his infinite love, she says to me, will never force his intentions on you, right? So, Mare, I was thinking, in the same way that Ella shared with me, and I shared with you, would you share what it means, this God being a gentleman?
Yes. It means that God loves you.
The invitation thing, too.
Again,
that is so...
Yeah. And this is very Mormon.
Ruby and Jodi and missionary style.
Missionary speak.
So much that he doesn't ever want you to feel forced to love him. Love is only love if freely
chosen.
Yeah.
Love is only love if freely chosen. He really wants a tender...
No accent.
No accent. And also does the thing where, like, Brit is the one, like, doing a lot of the talking, which was also what happened with, like, Jodi and Ruby, to the point that Jodi would almost get irritated sometimes if Ruby, like, interjected or, like, went off script. Yeah. So, like, I'm starting to see parallels there, too.
Kind, gentle relationship with you, right?
Right. No force, no control. He wants you to live in those unforced rhythms of grace.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
He will never put anything heavy or ill-fitting on you, right? I love when you say that. Yeah. Jesus, he loves you so much. The truth is that he's given you free will, right?
Yeah.
He's given you the freedom to choose him.
Anything,
yeah. To choose him, to choose
You see how she was listening for the right answer? She was like, that's not what it was. Not that. It's anything, or whatever the answer was. That was not what she was looking for.
Anything. Seriously, anything. And he wants you to choose him, but
you don't have to.
You don't have to. As much as God or Abba loves you, you know, he loves every person
More Jewish
created.
appropriation.
And just like he would never snatch away the free will that he's given you, he will never take away anyone else's free will. But that's a problem, right?
It's a problem. It's a huge problem, and it's a struggle because there are people in this world who completely misuse the gracious gift that God has given us of free will and have chosen to take away many people's free will, my free will, your free will, and hurt us, like the people that have abused us.
Exactly. You know, Mare, we talk about dialectical dilemmas, right? Where two opposing forces exist simultaneously. Can you share on that?
Yes, I would love to. So on camera there was a
Missionaries.
lot that was really good in my life, but off camera there was a lot that was really excruciating. So they both existed at the same time, but they didn't cancel the other out. But it did make life rough and hard to navigate and understand.
Yeah, and there's so much internal conflict.
Again, so vague. Like, not like, tell me about this in your life. It's like, I had these things and there were two opposing forces. And I mean, that's what dialectical is, but like nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I was a teenager and I had to do X, Y, Z, it's just all like very vague, self-helpy jargon.
Yeah. Almost like it came from another book or something like that.
Right? And the truth of the matter is we all experience dialectical dilemmas. We all experience that internal conflict because we live in a fallen world, right? And the truth is that the enemy, he causes true evil in this world. And we really do suffer. People really do suffer. God hates the hurt and harm that's come to us. He hates the hurt and harm, anything that's been forced on you. That breaks his heart. The amazing thing is,
if we could get an AI, we could train an AI to make a voice filter on Jodi's voice, and we ran her voice through it, I guarantee you, if you closed your eyes, you would not be able to tell that it wasn't Jodi.
No, this is bizarrely similar stuff.
Like the mannerisms, the kind of cadence, and
which they're
stuff
not
like that.
offering anything really unique.
Yeah,
Like
no.
they're regurgitating lots of religious talking points that everybody has heard before, and every person who's ever followed like a 20-year-old Christian girl on Instagram has seen in their lifetime. So there's nothing really like truly standing out for me here that wouldn't be something that you could find. Like there's nothing, like this is just so vague for me.
Yeah.
is at the same time, right? God is there. He's truly present. And there is real goodness and grace. Jesus, he will conquer all evil and he will heal all wounds. And in fact, something my precious counselor told me was that scripture talks pretty clearly about their eternal consequences, right? There's real justice for those who force their intentions on us, for those who perpetrate violence against us. And his goodness and grace, he will triumph over evil, right? He is the Prince of Peace. That's who Jesus says. And he calms the raging storm.
Are you past the point of weary?
For any of you that have gone through this, we actually
That
want
was
to...
such a weird cut.
That was like, okay, are we done?
Maybe
Why
we should have gone back and
in
added
my
a
face?
little bit to kind of
What is happening?
transition.
share some resources
Segue.
with you, and we want to equip you today. That's what this is all about, right? Breaking the silence, healing. Mara and I were talking about how the first step of healing is breaking the silence to yourself, right? And we're going to talk about all kinds of therapeutic techniques, even writing in the future, journaling, what that is. And then breaking the silence by telling someone really trusted. And we're actually going to talk about that and how to do that. My daughter, she was actually sitting over here. She's in her 20s, and she goes, "Mommy, you are going to talk about like..."
Holy British accent again. Oh my
All of a
God.
sudden,
To tell, because it really matters who you tell and how you tell. You need people who are equipped and understand. And recovery actually improves when you have someone that responds
graciously.
yes,
With compassion and doesn't deny what you've gone through.
exactly. Look at you. Look at what you've learned.
like, I'm not trying to necessarily discredit that she is actually from the UK or whatever, and if she is,
Great.
maybe she has lived elsewhere for a long enough time that
It fades in and out.
it fades or whatever, but it at least feels like she is trying to bring it out.
Comes out super thick.
Yeah. And
then just
sometimes she
disappears.
kind of laxes and then she like straightens up and
It's like
stuff
Clinton
like that.
Kane.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The books.
Yeah, absolutely. So one book that we want to share with you, you're really
Oh,
the better person.
This is the Courage to Heal book. And this is a guide for women survivors of child sexual abuse.
And I would say that guys can actually look at this book as well. The information in this is profoundly beautiful. They're not actually counselors. One of them is a survivor, another one is a writer. And they created workshops for women. And it had nothing to do with sexual abuse when they started out. Women started showing up, and what they were writing about was their experiences. And I get excited about group dynamics. I love group counseling. That's my favorite thing to do because the support.
Except there was no evidence-based practice, no sort of credentials.
Which, don't get me wrong, it can be helpful to read other people's experiences, like especially other survivors. Just be careful when you're looking at like implementing things in your own life, because you don't want to cause like any further like traumatization by doing things that are recommended to you by somebody who's like not a professional. And that's not like a therapist. That can be like a doctor, a psychiatrist, like a psychologist. Like we rely, like the professional resources are so important because they're not just like willy-nilly advice that like we give people to try. It's like the majority of these things are evidence-based and they're not going to cause further harm.
Other survivors offer each other is just priceless, honestly. This book it's incredible. It's such a resource. It's probably my 20th time reading through. Mare and I bring it to the beach.
Yeah.
We go through different sections.
You can read it on Audible as well. I listen to it on Audible.
Yeah. Allies and Healing.
This is one of my favorites. Yeah. I love this book.
This is one of the same authors. Her name is Laura Davis. And this book, we're going to go through some sections with you in the future as well. When the person you love was sexually abused as a child. And there's also the Courage to Heal workbook.
Yeah.
Mare puts it on in the car.
Yeah, I listen to these on Audible. Yeah. And sometimes I hold it and listen to it.
This is my next favorite, and it's called Invisible Girls, Speaking the Truth About Sexual Abuse. Dr. Patty, she had an incredible impact on my life, actually. I called myself an invisible girl, honestly, and I wanted to be invisible, and my life was pretty visible in a lot of ways, but nobody was seeing me, and I feel like that's the same thing for you. Your life has been really visible, but nobody was really noticing, right? Nobody was paying attention to all the pain and the hurt behind the scenes.
Why?
That's really true.
Right? That was a thumbnail.
It was a thumbnail for one of her videos? Mm-hmm. Why include that? Just as like proof, like, hey, she was
one of the contexts. One of the contexts for this is Meredith has talked about having an eating disorder in the past, and so I'm thinking that maybe that's what they're referencing here, is that like she truly was unhealthy. Like this is what she was eating, like almonds and like
a little yogurt.
Yeah,
thing.
And like that's it. So it was like she was probably unhealthy, but she's got like these like hundreds of thousands of people watching her videos. And so I think that's what she's referencing.
Okay.
Into all the pain and the hurt behind the scenes.
Right, that's really true.
Right? This is an incredible guide. We'll talk more about it in the future, but anybody can pick up this book. So Mare and I, we want to equip you with some resources. And one of the best websites and support networks is through RAINN. That's RAINN.
Great resource.
And you can call them. It's 1-800-656-HOPE. That's 4673. Or you can actually chat with them online. RAINN will equip you. Basically, there's a hotline, and if you are struggling with really anything related to sexual assault or sexual abuse, whether it's in your past, whether it's happening currently, you can reach out to them.
That's awesome.
And it is completely confidential. They will ask if you're currently safe, and they will connect you with local resources. And there's so much information on this website, but they're there for you 24/7.
Oh, wow. Another wonderful resource is Brit's website. So it's just BritandFairly.com.
Except you can't get to it anymore. Which is also a big red flag for me in this situation. Like you can, but it's locked down, so you have to like log into it with an email and a password. And so that's another red flag for me in this situation. Like this video goes up, and then there's comments are turned off for this video and the other one that we're going to show you that references Brit as well. And then her website is now private, and she takes down a few of her YouTube videos, also private.
Weird.
Links to the resources in the description box, but definitely go check out her website.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma support on there. Yeah, trauma support, trauma resources, survivor stories, like healthy coping mechanisms. You can just pop on there and there's anything really.
Yeah.
And our prayer for you today, right, is that
you would just open your heart to the open door of Jesus's love, because he is the door and he's pursuing you right now. He says, my child, I love you. I died for your sins.
I mean, just look at the way she looks at her. She looks at her, in my opinion, the way that Jodi used to look at Ruby. And it was like, there's like this admiration, but then there's the other one who has like the power dynamic, who just is like, so like, there's just something
like a laser.
There's something there, because there is a power dynamic here at play. Like, we have a professional, even though she might not be acting in a professional capacity, and we have an age dynamic where there's kind of this implicit trust potentially being extended because you're older than me and you have daughters my age and you're Christian. So like, we see this in Mormonism all the time, like, because they're Mormon or because they love God, like, they're automatically trustworthy. They would never do anything to hurt me. They wouldn't take advantage of me. It's like extending this trust that might be kind of misplaced or kind of leaving you open to be taken advantage of.
Welcome you into my family, and yeah,
He sees you. He loves you. He wants you.
yeah, that's good. Fair. You're valuable.
2 hugs in a video,
I think maybe 3.
at least. Oh, we get the bloopers too?
Lean to the right. Cha-cha, real smooth.
We do it.
Britt, who set you free? Jesus.
I just feel so icky. And don't get me wrong, I would love to be 100% wrong about the vibes in this situation. I would love to be just completely inaccurate and just completely off my rocker. I mean, truly, I would love to be.
Absolutely.
But the parallels and the math ain't mathin' here. So the other video that I wanted to show you guys, which also has comments turned off, this was from a year ago. And it speaks to kind of Britt a little bit and their relationship a little bit, and adds some details that we didn't have before.
Last year at this time,
We skipped a little montage that was just B-roll. So.
Yeah.
And copyrighted music, likely.
is when this book came across my computer screen, and I actually ordered it on Amazon, and then I got on Zoom with the author, and she...
Okay, so comments were made about Britt's hair, which appears to be a wig.
Yeah.
And people have been making critical comments, which, like, teach their own, whatever. But I think this is partially why. So, like, I read online somewhere, and I have nothing to back this up, that, like, Britt is actually ill or has cancer of some kind. And so I don't know the truthfulness of that. I could not find anything anywhere on that aspect of this, but there is this. So I'm thinking that's why the wig is involved, just for reference. But this is Britt's book that she wrote, which is just like a pro-life montage for hundreds of pages.
This is also a reminder at this point, if you wrote something unnecessarily mean about her hair, you have the option to edit
delete
it
it
or delete it. So.
author, and she read it to me. And so Britt Fairley, I call her Britt. She is chooser of life. She is a lover of Jesus, a daughter, sister, medically minded, ministry inclined, cheeky, and redeemed. And as long as she's still breathing, she intends to pour Jesus's grace on every person she meets, especially teens. What she wrote in here has just touched my heart in ways that I just can never describe, and it just transformed the way I thought. This book is gonna make you cry, it's gonna make you laugh. It is such a beautiful story. Choosing Life is about a prominent British teen whose name is Bridget Jameson, living in the land of the Kiwis, New Zealand. Shout out to all the Kiwis out there. So this book unwraps the often untouchable subjects of premarital sex, abuse, abortion, adoption, and teen parenthood prevalent in every level of society today. It is a story of ultimately falling passionately and personally in love with the truest realization of our Heavenly Father as He reveals that yes, everything is relentlessly redeemable, and His grace for you is
So this
always...
is basically like a paid ad.
Yes, and this was a year ago. So this was
Last
close to
February.
a year ago. Yeah, so there's been some time in between, like a decent amount of time for them to like develop a relationship or, you know, whatever. Like it appears from this that Meredith reached out to her. which again tracks with our Ruby Jodi situation where you have the like non-professional person reaching out to the other person, and then the other person obviously seeing some mutual benefit to the usage of a potential platform. But yeah, this just reads like a long ad, and it's not like a self-help book. It's like actually a novel. Like it is like a young adult oriented novel about those topics.
Is sufficient. So when you buy this book, you are not only getting so much grace lavished on you and getting to read a beautiful story, but you are also getting to support and help women and babies in places where they don't get the kind of support and help that we do, and you're getting to change their life and touch their heart and their soul.
They knit a hat for every baby and pray a blessing over it. They anoint the babies' heads in a bedside baby shower, and they say, "We warm heads and hearts to know their worth in Christ."
And so I just encourage you, if you can, to go head over to Amazon or to Barnes & Noble and purchase this book, because it is going to bless someone more than you will ever know. And so I just thank you, Britt, for writing a book that is going to transform and change the hearts and minds of so many young girls all over the world with God's grace and His goodness and His love and kindness for us. So yes, definitely a faith favorite. I understand that sex is an uncomfortable and personal topic for many people, but we need to talk openly about it with teens, why God's plan for sex is so important and so beautiful. We need to brush away our personal embarrassment with the topic and overcome our inability to really get to the heart of the matter. And then we need to separate the circumstances that lead to the pregnancy from the actual unborn baby itself growing in the pregnant teen's belly. The roads to having sex.
So it's basically just a giant pro-life ad. Is what it is. And I would venture to guess.
Fucking music.
I know, honestly. I would venture to guess there's some shame in there. Could be wrong.
Yeah.
But choosing life kind of really tells me everything I need to know. I mean, if you're new here, we're obviously not right-leaning. So
yeah,
that kind of goes without saying at this point. But this is like a massive, like knowing the amount of subscribers and potential viewers that she has on her channel, like for a smaller author who maybe wasn't traditionally published by like, one of the big, the big five, the big publishers, which this was not, like would make a big difference in terms of like advertising. Like this is essentially free marketing. I'm assuming that there's not a paid kind of transaction going on between them.
Well, I would hope not, because
they would have to disclose that.
Yeah, they would have to have a word with the FTC.
So that's what I'm assuming is happening here. But this leads me to believe that this relationship has been going on for a minute. I don't know if this person has been involved in her faith journey like the entire time she's been like leaning into the religiousness, or if it's just like within the last year when she read her book, or if there's more to it. But I thought this was interesting, like in the context of kind of what we've seen.
Also, notably, the comments are turned off on this one.
I would have loved to have seen when people are commenting.
Yeah, or maybe she had the foresight enough to not have the comments on at all.
Maybe.
So when you go to her website, BrittonFairley.com, I'm assuming at one point it was just like open to everybody. But now when you go there, you're greeted with a little sign-in box, and you have to sign up or sign in or whatever. So we used a burner account to get in. And it seems, I don't know, fairly inconspicuous. It says a lot of the shit. Just this is the synopsis of the book. It says the same thing here that it says on the back of her book. It's not really anything. But when you go to the FAQ, and notice this is private as well, kind of strange. When you go to the FAQ about the author, like, Brett, where are you from? YouTube video, that's private. And all of these are...
We tried all of them.
All of them are private, which... Now we cannot... Oh, there's the Messianic Jewish Family Bible is what they were using, which is really strange that she would have built a whole website and made all these videos, and now that they're gaining traction, she privated them all. So unless somebody out there had like downloaded these videos, they are essentially inaccessible, and the only way they would ever be accessible again is if she released them from her account, or whoever had access to that account. So if you have some or if you had downloaded them for whatever reason,
let us know.
Yeah, let us know, or link them, or a Reddit thread, or whatever.
But there's nothing in the like meet the author or anything that Meredith didn't just read to you in that video that we just watched.
Yeah.
And so there's no additional information.
And then it's just stuff about the book club. You can go to the life coaching and trauma consulting.
Here's where things get interesting for me as a therapist, okay? If you are a licensed therapist, why are you talking about life coaching? Or if you are a trauma counselor, why are you talking about life coaching? There are some people who do both. Like there are some therapists who are licensed, and then there are some people who also do coaching, and they're different things. But the other thing that sets me off when I'm looking at, well-versed in this after Jodi, the word consulting. There's a difference between counseling and consulting. And consulting is obviously not like diagnostic, not treatment oriented, not symptom oriented necessarily. This is like basically what I can do within the bounds of being a coach that doesn't violate like where the line is between being a coach and a therapist. So if she's truly a therapist, like this is interesting to me. Like if you do all the work, if you get a PhD, if you go through the process of being fucking licensed, I'm putting that shit on my website.
Why would you not be really proud of that?
Why would you not put that on there? And like even there it says like life consulting by Brighton Fairley. And so if you go down, so she has this trauma informed consulting tab and talks about just like general information about trauma.
Like Instagram posts made in Canva. And
I looked and I could not find an Instagram account for her. And so the one that stood out to me here was trauma-informed consulting does not make judgments, nor is it overly focused on suppressing symptoms, labeling behaviors, or making diagnoses. Well, this is important when you're in a life coaching role and you're also a therapist, that you cannot be diagnosing somebody as a life coach. That is out of your scope as a professional. So you cannot be doing that. So this to me also says like there's not trauma counseling happening here, because counseling, like true ethical counseling, generally involves diagnosis and a treatment plan. Doesn't have to be the entire focus. Many therapists aren't like DSM hard on people, but that's kind of the basis of things. It's like we have to kind of know what we're working with, and we operate kind of ethically because of these requirements that have kind of been put in place. And so this is another thing that kind of red flags me for language that shows like this isn't actually counseling. Like this isn't actually therapy.
Yeah. Well, it's right there.
Yeah.
Life coaching and life counseling, or consulting, not even counseling.
So I'm not seeing anything counseling here. Again, she can have the degree, she can have the PhD in it.
Yeah.
But she's not licensed. And not sharing where you are like is another thing that protects people from people looking this information up, because generally if you don't know where somebody lives, you can't look up the database to see if they're actually licensed or not, or if they've ever been licensed. And there's also like, it's like generally pretty difficult in some countries, like if you have a degree that's obtained, and I don't know if she got her degree in the US, but it's hard to get licensed in another country and operate in the same like therapeutic role. There's a lot of red tape and things that you have to jump through, and you might have to do like additional schooling. They might not even accept like United States schooling as like accredited for certain things. Like it's complicated. So the fact that she's also potentially operating in a different country also makes me feel sus about the whole thing. But that's just my beef. Again, if she's a licensed therapist, like I'm happy to eat my words.
Yeah.
Or a licensed counselor, I'm happy to eat my words. But this doesn't lead me to believe that's the case. And if they're promoting this website as of this video, this tells me this is up to date and accurate.
Yeah.
So it's not like an old website, I wouldn't think, because then why would she promote it?
It's not inspiring confidence.
No.
With a lot of information that has been taken down. I mean, even this Kama has said life consulting, and the Instagram was deleted.
Anything about that.
Or there's no Instagram, but just a surface level look was not able to yield anything about Kama has said life consulting.
Like she's got one Instagram account that has 0 posts, 4 followers.
Not even
the only person she's following is Meredith.
And Meredith doesn't even follow her back.
And then there's this.
Or at least it would appear so.
And then there's another account called Fairly Baby. I'll have McKay put it up on the screen. She linked this in her bio. But
no posts.
2
followers that are probably bots.
Only following a random person, and has 2 other followers that look like bots. The Fairly, so it looks like this might have been like a private account. I don't know. This is weird. It's not private. There's just no posts. So, but none of this is attached to it.
Yeah. And then there's like the ministry thing, but there is no information about any sort of ministry or like what, like it just says your purchase directly impacts the lives of underprivileged new moms and babies. And that's a fact. We like to say we exchange hopelessness for hope in Jesus' name. We are changing bag ministry, changing, what is it even a
I
changing
don't even
bag
know what
ministry?
that means.
Sorry, we're not up on that sort of
We're not a ministry.
vocabulary. Changing one new life at a time with all the new baby and new mom supplies necessary for the first month of life in a bedside baby shower shortly after birth, warming the heads and hearts. We also quietly offer crisis intervention and trauma counseling service.
Why does it say quietly? Why are you quietly offering it? Like is that supposed to be like a humble thing? Like we're humbly offering the services? Because in a different context, I could read that as we're not supposed to be doing that, so we're quiet about it. Because again, she says trauma counseling services, but I don't see any counseling.
And we can't figure out where this is allegedly going or where she was. I'm guessing the photos are kind of related. In a video that we might watch in a second here, she referenced herself in Spanish. And there's a three-toed sloth here, which would imply that she was in, Central to South America.
Maybe, yeah.
But I don't know. This doesn't look related.
Well, these also
These are
just look like random
photos.
images, like stock photos, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. The sloth does seem kind of
The sloth seems
intentional.
specific, yeah.
But speaking Spanish, you can already, if she's saying in a developing country and they're speaking Spanish, you can most likely guess it's Central or South America.
Yeah. Go to resources. So she listed on here Britt's Dialectical Behavioral Therapy website, which is a really fairly in-depth website with a bunch of information on DBT, which is a very valid and very heavily researched therapy modality for specific populations. And so I wonder if this was I could see this, and I could be totally wrong. Maybe she just did this out of the goodness of her heart and she has a lot of time. This is a lot of time and energy to put into a website. So I almost wonder if this was a doctoral project or a master's project she had to do.
But for out of the kindness of your heart, it seems like she,
it's just
the way she
DBT.
operates, it seems like she's looking to get something out of it. She has the book and stuff, but when you go through this website, there's absolutely nothing that links to her providing providing services or anything like that. It's purely information.
Yeah. Which makes me think it's a school project.
Yeah.
So the one thing that was on here that was a video that we still could access was this video, which we'll play for you. And this was because it's tied to a separate account.
It's like a burner.
It's a different
if you go
YouTube.
In here, it's just a random account. The video is unlisted, so if you go to the account, it doesn't matter.
You won't be able to see it, but here you can.
Hello, and welcome to my Dialectical Behavior Therapy website. My name is...
Also, listen to that accent. And she is not much younger in this video than she was in the other video. And she's wearing the same wig.
That's true.
Brit,
Make it bigger.
or you could call me Hermana Brit, as I'm often referred to.
Hermana Brit.
Can you turn it up a little?
No, this is
as loud
as it gets. Hold on, maybe I can.
In my part of the world. No, I'm not a sister in the Roman Catholic sense. I'm actually a medical missionary and a perinatal health practitioner.
Well, it's funny too because I don't think...
No elaboration on medical missionary.
I don't think you call them hermana in the Roman Catholic sense. There's another word that I think it is. They don't use sister. It's not the same word. So she's not very fluent in...
Well, she's also sitting in front of the ocean. What
Spanish.
A beautiful spot to be right now.
As well as a crisis interventionist and trauma counselor. So what does this mean exactly? Well, it means that some days I listen to physical hearts with my stethoscope here. And most days I pay particular attention to listening to the emotional heart. So then you're probably wondering, what does perinatal health practitioner mean? Well, essentially this is an individual with a medical educational background who desires to serve and support women who are giving birth both in the antenatal and postpartum periods. Now you might be thinking, new mums, new babies, there must be a lot of joy, Brit. And you're absolutely right. New babies certainly bring a whole lot of joy. And yet there's a dichotomy or a dialectical dilemma for many of the young women that I...
Dialectical dilemma.
Again.
That she brought up in the Meredith video.
Whilst they do experience joy, many of them actually have survived years of ongoing sexual abuse, circumstances of incest or sex trafficking, and they suffer from significant emotional dysregulation and distress. They frequently meet the criteria, the diagnostic criteria for complex post-traumatic stress disorder as well. And this is really where my interest in dialectical behavior therapy began, or DBT, as it is considered an effective treatment for the reduction of symptomology in survivors of sexual trauma. Okay, Britt, there you go again, right? You just said that word, dialectical, again. So, dialectical. This is basically a philosophical term that describes two concepts that seem to be opposing or opposite, but in fact can be true at the same time. For instance, with the young women I work with, new mums, they can experience tremendous joy with their new baby, but they may also be silently suffering from tremendous emotional distress. Now, in the more traditional sense of DBT, this refers to what Marsha Linehan originally created the therapy for, and she created this therapy for chronically suicidal clients who self-harm and may struggle with, struggle with pervasive emotional dysregulation. They may relentlessly feel like they want to die, and yet simultaneously want to live. These two concepts are not mutually exclusive, and they can actually coexist. From a therapeutic stance,
like, it just seems like a...
I don't disagree. She's not saying... I mean, she's just quoting the DBT textbook. Like, there's nothing here that's wrong.
But it just seems like it's a project kind of thing.
Yeah, but I also... I mean... They're very, like, in professional spaces, like with therapy and mental health, like they're very sticklery about like how you identify yourself. Like I have to identify myself as an associate licensed clinician. I have to identify myself as an associate licensed therapist. Like you have, like, it's unethical to misrepresent your credentials because it, like, you know, it sabotages public trust and your ability to do your job. And I mean, it's just plain unethical. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this was a school project if she added this later, because I wouldn't be calling myself that if that's not. And maybe it's like make a video that you would want your client, because I did that when I was doing my master's degree. Like make a video that your client, like people accessing your therapy website so they can read about you and who you are and what you're doing. So maybe that would be a good excuse for something like this, where you can like say, oh, well, it was for my school project where I was supposed to be referring to myself as a therapist for the activity itself. So, I mean, maybe. Let her finish and see if she says anything interesting.
DBT is actually a third wave or third generation multimodal stage-based cognitive behavior treatment that consistently seeks to balance acceptance of one's current reality with necessary change, such as decreasing distressing emotions and increasing new adaptive skills. If you're a clinician, I hope that you will spend some time getting to know some of the core features of DBT here on the website and whether you might want to pursue further training. And if you are an individual in significant emotional distress, I really hope that you will find by looking more closely at DBT that ultimately there is a therapist out there who wants to collaborate with you in a real, reciprocal, equal relationship and help you set goals toward achieving a life that you consider worth living. What do I appreciate about this therapy? What I really appreciate about this therapy, and I hope that you will too, is its capacity to really serve a diverse clientele, its collaborative nature, its approachable and well-structured strategies such as distress tolerance skills, self-soothing skills, or distracting skills, its empirical support, as well as its ability to actually adapt its acceptance and mindfulness stance for Christian spirituality grounded in God's word and his grace.
There it is.
Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by and have a look at my website. I do hope that you will be as enthused about the potential for healing through DBT as I am. Thanks. Cheers.
How do you turn off the camera?
Maybe YouTube has in-house little editing tool.
So I don't know who this is at Design. Like, who's the audience for this? Is it a therapist? Like, 'cause she talks about clinicians and she talks about clients. Like, who's the audience for this? I don't know. I think it might be a school project because it was like, maybe she's just using it as a resource now because she did it and she put all the work in, so she might as well put it on her actual website. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. This is just bizarre to me. Like, there's some bizarre things happening. She never refers to herself as a therapist. She never says what her actual, like, qualifications are. And maybe the country that she's in specifies it that way. And so maybe she is correctly identifying based on the country that she's in. But I don't know.
It would seem now that she's operating in the United States of America. And
if she's with Meredith, then that would presumably be the case. So,
or B-Dong for that fact.
And like, it's one thing to say that I have a degree in trauma counseling, but that does not make me a counselor.
Yeah.
You know, like I think there deserves to be, like, if you're going to be doing it, like, it seems like they're trying to do a series on this. Like, this is going to be like a whole series that she does with Meredith. Like, I would want to be very clear about what my, like, credentials and qualifications are. Like, not only to protect to be clear to, like, the public, but to protect myself so that I don't end up in a dicey situation with the licensing board. So, like, really, I'm just, like, looking out for you. And I'd love to eat my words. And if that's all accurate and good and that's how you choose to represent yourself and there's nothing wrong with it, then, like, good on you. But there's still some fishy things happening here aside from the therapy angle.
And we're not trying... I mean, it really comes off that we're, like... It's a little worrisome, honestly, to see the parallels between... And we watched a lot of stuff with Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, and even a year ahead of time, we were like, this is not gonna end well. We know for a fact. And, like, we saw with Jodi that she was operating as a therapist or a counselor or whatever. At one point, she was disciplined by the licensing board because she broke confidentiality and absolutely ruined the reputation of one of her clients. Mm-hmm. After that, she was kind of scorned by the professional setting and decided to pivot and do coaching, which doesn't really seem like she was coaching, but she was trying to operate as a therapist
in a coaching role.
And then along came Ruby, and she formed a relationship with Ruby through the wounds that Ruby had, whether that be manufactured
trauma
or whatever. And she got so close, she brought Ruby on to work with her, that personal relationship. Well, they both
had trauma, remember? Because we learned about from Jodi in her book that she also had, like, childhood trauma and things, and so they were connecting over trauma.
They brought Ruby in, and Ruby was like the second hand of Jodi for a long time. And things just began to progress to the point where they committed a crime, almost to the point of abusing Ruby's children to death. So I'm not saying that is going to play out, but it is really, really concerning to see the parallels.
Those same behaviors.
We don't know how, but I have a really good feeling that this is...
I have a bad feeling. Like, I have a bad feeling about all of this.
Yeah. And the way that the same thing with the co-opting of her platform and...
Yeah.
It's weird.
And the weird touching and, like,
the super enmeshed.
I mean, even the video, like, using, like, very self-helpy, coachy things in, like, short-term videos, and then B-roll of, like, random people, and, like, very, like, it's just all the parallels are icking me out. And I hope, and I said this with Ruby and Jodi, and I'll say it here too, I hope we're wrong. And maybe people calling them out and pointing this out will make them not do this thing, or will make them do it more clearly or in a more, like, transparent format. Like, that's my goal with this. Like,
but, like, hiding information about her is a huge red flag.
I mean, taking things down is sus behavior to start.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if that wasn't your intention, like, even if she was like, oh, these videos are embarrassing and I want to refilm them, like,
or whatever.
But it doesn't come across that way.
Yeah. Just take out the FAQ section in your website.
Yeah. Like, it just...
It's weird.
Stuff is not adding up. And like I said, we're not saying that these two women are going to do anything heinous or are going to commit crimes or anything, because the likelihood of that is fairly low. But when we see similar behaviors, similar red flag behaviors, there's still potential for harm and damage.
Whether it be Meredith or somebody else, I don't know. It seems like someone is being taken advantage of. This is
the consequences of having a platform and putting up stuff. Like, just like we get criticized for things, and, you know, it's part of it. Like, you put this shit out on the internet, and Meredith has a massive freaking platform. Like, this is what's gonna happen. Like, you're gonna have scrutiny on you like nobody's business, because everybody's gonna be like, what the hell is she talking about? This is weird. And that's why it's all over TikTok, and that's how it got to us.
Seriously.
And so this is just natural consequences of, like, being on the internet and putting shit out. But I hope we're wrong. I hope nothing bad happens.
Obviously, yeah.
I hope, like, we're not saying that they're going to commit crimes.
Like, wringing our hands at the downfall of, you know, whatever.
We're not saying they're bad people. Like, we're just pointing out some similarities. Hopefully gives them the opportunity to correct things, to clear some things up, to maybe take a different path, to maybe not post these things. I don't know. And also allows other people to decide whether or not they want to be getting information or resources or things from these people. And are there other motives? Like, I'm not thrilled with Meredith's other political content. And so if you don't align with her, then, I mean, there's plenty of reasons that you wouldn't be watching anyway. But for the people who aren't necessarily familiar with why this might be a problem, I think it's important that these things are discussed. So,
because 4 million subscribers is huge. We rarely talk about anybody that has a platform that large. 4 million on YouTube is huge. It's not like 4 million on TikTok is a whole different story. 4 million on YouTube is gigantic.
And she's on all, like, she's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on YouTube. Like, there's plenty of opportunities for this to be seen and go places. So, again, I hope we're wrong. I hope that they are just harmless and maybe fumbled a bit. And
what is going on with the fucking accent? Please, I am so weirded out.
I'm weirded out. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you think. Experts around Meredith who've been watching her forever, if you've got input or things you want to add, feel free to drop those in there. If there's anything we got wrong or we need to fix, drop those in there. We can make edits. I truly hope that this is the last video that we ever have to make about this.
It's bizarre. Anyway, I'll just let's close this one out. Thank you for following along all the way into the end. If you're new to us and you would like to see more of what we have, you can check out our channel. You can subscribe and hit the bell to see more of the content that we have coming out ahead of time. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok. You can find us at Jordan and McKay in both of those places. We also have an awesome Discord community. I think we'll probably, after this one drops, we might need to make a channel about this one. So you can find the invite link to that in the description down below. But other than that, thank you for following along. We love you. You're awesome. If you have an accent, stick with the accent. And we'll see you.